Let's do some hands-on, and it would be a full-fledged hands-on wherein I'm giving you some problem statement and you'll try to solve it. So this is the first hands-on, and what it says is that create a class for the following. Use first name, last name and date of birth to print full name and age. Generate a random customer ID and email ID. So it seems like it is onboarding application, the first one, and as part of this onboarding application, I am providing any customer would give the first name and last name, and it would provide the date of birth, and based on that, based on the first name, last name, full name and age would be printed. And not only that, the customer's email ID would also be generated, and the customer would be given a random customer ID. And this is the first problem statement for the first application. In the second application, what it says that I think it's an employee application or maybe employee manager application, wherein the manager would input the current salary to calculate hike based on percentage, and will use the date of joining from manager to calculate the years of experience. And if the years of experience is more than 20, then 3% hike. If years of experience is 10 to 20, then 4% hike. And if years of experience is less than 10, then 5% hike, or the manager can also give some random hike. And for both the cases, we'll take input from user. For the first one, the input would be from the customer. It will generate the customer details or the customer profile in that application. And the second one is a second application wherein the manager will use this application to calculate the hike, and maybe it will provide the current salary also, which I have not mentioned. So let's go ahead and do that. And as you can see, at least we'll have to create two classes. So one class would be for the first one, and then second class would be for the second one. And we'll see the methods that we have to create. And I have written it down here also in the hands-on. There is the same program, 3IAM Python Advanced, and I'll be doing the coding here. Right. So first, let's create a class for the customer onboarding application. So the first method that we want to define is the init method, because using init method will generate the full name and age. So let's take the first name, last name and date of birth, and based on this we will generate the full name. Self dot first name would have the fn as the value, and then self dot last name would have last name, and then self dot date of birth will have the value of date of birth. And now what will I do? We will print the full name, and it would be self dot first name followed by a space and then self dot last name. So we are concatenating the first name and the last name, which is pretty straightforward. Now to calculate the age, I have got only date of birth in the format YYYYMMDD in the ISO 8601 format. So I'll have to calculate the age. Now to calculate the age, how do I do that? You will get today's date, and we will subtract date of birth from today's date, find out the number of days, and then calculate the age. This would also happen in the init method. So what will I do is, let's get today's date. So how do I do that? In SQL you have this current time, current date, etc. In Python there's a module called date time, and we'll talk about module in the next topic, and I'll also discuss what modules and packages are and what are the very important inbuilt modules. But as of now, just follow along. So we have a module called date time, and I'll type from date time import date and date time. So I'll get today's date. So to get the today's date, we'll have to use date time. So it would be date time dot today. There's a function called today which will give us the today's date. Let's try it out. Let's see how it would look like. Print date time dot today, and it will not execute the class. I'm just printing today's date. So this is what it is. So it has the year, then month, and then today's date followed by time. I do not need the time. So what will I do is, I can convert it to date. I'll use date time dot date to convert today in just date format. So this is the date. I think this is enough. And what will I do? This is datetime.today, and today just date will be datetime dot date function followed by today. So what it will do, it will extract only the date and not the time. So after this is done, we'll have to get the age, right? So to get the age, what do I do is that we'll have to subtract today's date, sorry, date of birth from today's date. So that would be the age. So I will subtract today's date from, sorry, date of birth from today's date. So this should be the age. I will print the age here. If I subtract date of birth from today's date, it will give me the age in number of days. So I'll have to find out the age in years, right? So that's what I'll mention, age in years, and it would be age divided by, sorry, it should be age divided by 365, and we'll convert it to integer because it would be in decimal. So you can print it out and try it out. So this is what the init function would do. It would get the date of first name, last name, and date of birth. It will print the full name, and it will print the age in years. So I think we're good here. So this is done. The first part is done. And in the second part, what I'll have to do is that I'll have to generate a customer ID and email ID, random customer ID and email ID. So I will define one more method, generate profile. And what will I get? I will get the first name and last name, because I'll have to generate the email ID using the first name and last name. So the first, let's go ahead and generate a customer ID. So customer ID would be some random number. Now, how do we generate random number in Python? So there's another module called random. So we can generate a random number using that particular module, and we'll have to import it using from random. So don't worry about this particular commands, from, date, time, or import random, etc. Because as I said, I'll be talking about this. Right now you can just type this command in your program, and here I'll use this particular random module, and here we have a function called randint, which will give us a random integer. We can provide the range, or it will generate a random integer by itself. Let me show you this. So if you type print random integer and randint, it needs a initial position, otherwise it will give you error. So as it says, it requires two arguments, a and b. A means the starting value, b means the ending value. Okay, so if I execute, it will generate a random number between 1 and 10. So I'll have to provide a random number. So let's say 100,000, and I know that the number of customers in the organization cannot be more than 200,000, which is also pretty big. So the random number would be between 100,000 to 300,000. Let me test it out. So before putting it in the class, just test out everything. So as you can see, it has generated a random number. So we'll use this random number. And the email ID, what should be the email ID? So email ID, what will I do is that I will get the first name and last name. So self dot, I'm using fn only, equal to fn, and self dot last name equal to ln. So this particular instance will get the first name and the last name, and email ID would be self dot first name dot lower, because it's a string, and plus concatenate dot followed by self dot last name dot lower. So I'm basically converting everything to lowercase, and again a dot, because I need the email ID to be unique. I'll add the customer ID also at the end, and then I'll print it. So print your customer ID is cust ID, and then I'll also print your email ID, and I'll provide the email ID here. So these are the two methods that I have created inside of this class onboard customer. All right, so now it is done. So I can execute this. I'll have to pass the first name, last name, and date of birth. But as per the question, it is saying that take input from the user to print the above information. So I think we'll have to take the input from the user, and you know how do you take input. So it is the input function. So let's say fn equal to input, enter your first name. I'm mentioning that you have to pass it in YYYMMDD format, otherwise it would be problematic. So after this, what will I do? I will create an object, right? So the moment I create the object, this particular method would be automatically executed, which is the init method. And then I'll use the generate profile method also for these customers. So let's say customer 1. So it would be a running method, so just cust would be enough. So it will initialize, create an object of onboard underscore cust class, and then cust dot generate profile. So I do not have to do any printing or anything here, because I have mentioned the print command in the method itself. So I hope it would work. Let's see, and execute this. Enter your first name and enter your last name and date of birth in YYYYMMDD format. And okay, it says that it needs 3 positional parameter. Why it is giving the error? So the error is because I have created an object of onboard underscore cust class, and this is the object, but the init method would get executed, right? So if I execute the init method, I have to pass the first name, last name, and date of birth, which I have not done. So that's why the error is. So let me pass first name, last name, and date of birth. And the same thing would be here for the second one also. I'll have to pass the first name and last name. So this is the first name and then the last name. So let's execute this again. So it says there's some problem, datetime.date and string. Now what is the problem? So what it is saying, error is in this age command and the today date and self.dob, that is the problem. Now what is happening? So datetime.date is not working because it's string. Seems like self.dob is a string, and we'll have to convert that into date, otherwise this will not work. So how do you do that? Again, there's another function. We can use the datetime.date function, and here I'll pass the self.dob, and I'll have to mention the format of date that I'm providing. So it should be year and then percentage month and then percentage date. These are all inbuilt functions. Don't worry too much about it. And here I'll not use self.dob, I'll use dob. Now one thing is that these are all inbuilt functions. We did not have to create anything. Let me execute it again. Sorry, the problem here is that I have to use strip time, so not date. And here then I'll use date time dot date. I hope it will work this time. And this is the final function. So what I'm doing here is that I'm getting the today's date and I'm converting it to date type. I'm stripping the time and date from dob, which is basically in string format, but I'll have to change it in date format. So after that, I'm extracting the date and I'm calculating the age by subtracting today's date then minus dob, and then I'm printing the age in years. So let's try to execute this. So the first one worked. So your full name is Roger Fed and your age is 39, which is working. The second one is not working. So it says customer ID, we cannot concatenate integer, and I think customer ID is integer because I used a random int or randint function. So let's execute this. So this is what it is. First name is Raj, and so this is the full name which is being shown, this is the age which is being shown, and this is the customer ID, and this is the email ID. Obviously there's no at the rate, and that's what it is saying. This is the output. Full name is Roger Federer, age in years, and this is the customer ID, and this is the email ID. So the first one is done. One application is created using Python class and object. Then we'll go ahead and create the second application wherein I'll use the current salary to calculate hike based on percentage, and we'll use the date of joining to calculate the years of experience. So let's go ahead and create another class for the same.